Nanga Parbat. This is a game that I picked up on my friendly local game store without really knowing anything about it, but I liked what I saw here. I liked that it was for 2 players and 30 minutes only, and it looked like a simple game that I could play with my daughters, and who knows, maybe even with my wife. Because of course these days I don't have game night because of the pandemic, and so I wanted something simple and light to play with them. And this has worked very well. First I played it solitaire just to learn the rules, so I play with 2 notional players. I control both sides to the best of my possibilities. Then I played it with my daughter Luisa, who is now 9, and then we even got to convince Mom to play the game. But I have to tell you also, one of the reasons why I was interested in the game is because it has these amazing meeples here. And sometimes you know how it is. You come for the meeples and you stay for the game. In this game we're gonna climb the mountain. Not exactly. One doesn't have the feel of a race on top of the mountain. Matter of fact, you're gonna move around this mountain collecting animals and forming sets of animals that then you will use to score. You also place meeples on the board, and those meeples then you use to build campsites, and that also scores you points. But again, mainly the idea is that you will be removing animals from the board. You place these animals here, totally adorable meeple animals. You place them on the board randomly in these spaces at the beginning of the game. And my daughter Luisa did ask me, what does it represent, the fact that you are collecting these animals? I thought, oh, maybe you're a tourist and that means you're collecting memories, you're just seeing them, taking pictures, or maybe you use them to carry your luggage. And of course Luisa knew the ugly truth and she said, or maybe you eat them. And maybe that's what happens. Whatever we do with these poor animals, we do take them off the board, but we don't venture on the mountain by ourselves. We gotta follow our trusted guide. So the mountain and the board is divided into regions, numbered from 1 to 6. Each region is divided into 6 areas, which also are numbered from 1 to 6. I wonder if there's a connection. Yes, there is, of course. Each player has a set of components representing meeples, campsites, a cube that goes here on the scoring track, and a couple of other scoring cubes. There's only a number of times during the game in which you will be able to score, and we'll see what that means. And of course you have a very important player board, a personal player board. Now players will alternate taking turns, and the idea is simply to create sets of animals or sets of campsites that will score the most points at the end of the game. Players alternate taking turns. When it is your turn, you need to place your meeple in an area of the region where the guide is, and you collect the animal from that area. So for example, I remove that animal, I place that animal on my board, and I place my meeple there, and after that the guide goes to the region indicated by the area where I just placed my meeple. I just placed the meeple in an area number 1, and so I place the guide there. And then it is the other player's turn, who will do the same. They will place one of their meeples in an available space, collecting the corresponding animal, and that moves the guide to the next space, to the next region, and so on and so forth. And now, for example, maybe I want to do this. Collecting the corresponding animal, moving this one back. Maybe that wasn't such a great idea. Now my opponent does that. No, you know, they do that. They collect that animal, sending the guide there, and so on and so forth. So you get a general idea of this aspect of the game, which pretty much is about the mandatory element of each turn, which is collect an animal, place your meeple in the space where you collected the animal, and move the guide to the corresponding space. We said that we're gonna place those animals here. That these animals can be used during your turn to perform special actions. When you perform an action with the animal, you simply move it to the bottom area to indicate that you cannot take that action anymore, but you can still use that animal for scoring. These two animals are special. This action here lets me switch the position of two adjacent meeples. This animal action lets me switch the position of a meeple with an adjacent animal, and vice versa. This is very powerful, lets me switch the position of two animals anywhere on the board. Say, for example, I know now I have to go there because my opponent sent me there and there isn't the animal that I want. Then I do this, so I switch it so now the animal is where I want it to be, and then I go there. This animal here lets me move the guide. Again, very powerful if the guide is not where I want the guide to be, or it is where I don't want you to go. So a lot of different interesting things here. These two animals, so this one will count as a wild when we trade animals for points, and we'll see what that means. This one, when you collect it, if you are behind in terms of points, you score a victory point right away, which may not look like much, but there's an interesting plot twist here when it comes to scoring. To score, you will move these cubes on the victory point track, and interesting enough, if after you collect your points you're sitting on top of the other player, then that just looks like wobbly and untidy, and so you just get an extra point, so you go past there. Which is interesting, which means when you reach the opponent, probably you're going to try then to gain some margin right away so that they don't do the same thing to you by collecting one of these weird squirrel-looking animals. So, that is for the powers of the animals. And then, of course, I said we gotta score. That's ultimately why we are doing all of these things. 5 times during the game, you will use one of your scoring points and you will place on one of these spaces. You can place a scoring cube per turn, only one, no more. Beginner's mistake is at the end of the game, they haven't used all of their cubes. And of course, if you use them early on, then they don't score maybe as much. If you wait too long, you don't get to use them. So what scores? I can score campsites, which is I can turn a group of my meeples that are adjacent to one another, and these white connections count as adjacent. I can simply turn them into a campsite. So I discard these 4 meeples out of the game, very important. Don't put them back in your supply, because that will make the game last forever. And then I just created a campsite with 4, and then look at that scoring table up there. That lets me place one of my scoring cubes here in the campsite area with 4, and that generates 5 victory points, which I then record here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's also another effect, which is no one, including myself, will be able to score a campsite with 4 meeples / tents for the rest of the game. So it really is a nice matter of opportunity cost here. But suppose that then later my opponent decides to spend one of their cubes to turn those 3 meeples into a campsite because they're adjacent, and they just do that. And 1, 2, 3 points, and I also need to place a cube there. Oh, that's 4 points. Boom, boom. Interesting. So, animals. We also can turn in animals from our personal board. We can discard them for points. I can discard sets of animals that are all different from one another, and again, the number, I cross-reference with basically what I'm scoring with the number of elements I'm scoring. Animals that are all different, I'm scoring 4 of them, that generates 7 points. And again, I spend one of my precious scoring cubes. 7 points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Or I can score animals that are all the same, and in this case, for example, I decide to score 3. But wait, I told you that this animal was wild, so for example, I can score 4 animals that are all the same if I discard these, and then again, all the same, I use this line for animals, or the same, again, 7 points. And again, I block that for others, but also for myself. So this is the general idea. Remember, back to the general, the core idea of pick up an animal, move your meeple, or place a meeple there, and then move the guide accordingly. Possibly use animal powers from your board. Once per turn, you have a chance of scoring something, campsites, sets of different animals, sets of the same animal, manipulating things using the wild maybe. And that's like that. You continue until both players have spent either all of their meeples or all of their cubes. At the point the game is over, you count victory points. The player with the highest score wins the game. So the game is very simple, but I have to tell you, it's really, really pleasant. It surprised me. I was expecting, you know, a nice little light filler with cute components, and the components are unbearably cute, that's true. But there is a lot more depth here. Now, you have perfect information, you know everything, exactly where everything is, what is left, what people have, so what they can do. In a sense, the game has some of that, the beauty of classic abstract games, you know, the ones that have been around for millennia, where all the pieces are there. There is that classic elegance, really, but at the same time the game is definitely fitting for modern sensibilities, because you have multiple ways of scoring points and a massive role of opportunity cost. You also have set collection, which again is it feels very modern to me, at least the way it is handled here. And so you really have a game that's very interesting to play. If good gameplay means difficult decisions, this game gives you a lot of those. In a package that is so darn tight, that is so, again, minimalistic almost, and very elegant. But, of course, well, I like to score a campsite of 4 right now. Well, but wouldn't it be great if I wait one more turn, these are still meeples, and then next turn that would be a campsite that is bigger, scores more points. But what if by then you have scored the same thing and you have occupied that space? Or you use one of your dark sorcery things and you're messing up, you're switching animal with meeple. You are doing all sorts of crazy stuff. Because those actions, they may be situational. Some are more situational than others. The yuck is always good. Some of these other ones may be situational, but if you're able to break one of their possible campsite and sneak one of your meeples in there, that can be that can have a big payoff. Switching animals also almost universally good. These two, again, not always as good, but pretty powerful. And then, you know, once people run for these animals, which is likely to happen, then you're gonna still want a lot of these to try to score for sets of the same animals. Everything comes together very well. You have a game that is, again, very simple, very elegant, but so much thinking. And I really like the fact that it is for 2 players only. Because I do think that with more than 2 players, then, you know, waiting while everybody else is thinking for their turn will become pretty much unbearable. But while you are thinking about your turn, I'm thinking about your turn. I'm thinking about what you can possibly do and what that may mean for me. Are you gonna use that effect to break that thing? And just so much to think about, because I want, of course, place the meeple where I can score for a campsite. And as I do so, I want to get an animal that will allow me to score. And as I do so, I want to place the guide in a position that doesn't help you too much. So those basically 3 layers of decision are what you have to deal every turn with, plus again the idea, and when do I score exactly? Can I push a little further for a better payoff, unless, of course, then you mess up my plan. I am very impressed with Nanga Parbat. It is a game that is so incredibly simple. Really, it is. It has the appearance, the look, and the rule book of a light filler, but it has a strategy of a much deeper game. I enjoyed playing with Luisa, who is 9. She enjoyed it very much. Even Mom played it, and even Mom enjoyed it. And these days, you know, she's always busy. She doesn't enjoy games that are too difficult to learn. Yet she could rock this one. and she enjoyed it, and she says she wants to play more in the future, which, trust me, is a big endorsement. So definitely big endorsement for me, from me, for Nanga Parbat. It is a simple game, but it's more than a filler. It's addictive, it's engaging, it has so many decisions in a very nice and elegant package. So I'm very happy with this game.